NATO, otherwise known as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, is an intergovernmental military alliance that was formed after the signing of the North Atlantic Treaty in Washington, D.C. on April 4, 1949. NATO started out as a small organization which was formed by the 5 nations that was signed to the Treaty of Brussels, which was signed on March 17, 1948. The Treaty of Brussels included 5 nations, which were Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, and the United Kingdom. Also, the Soviet Berlin blockade had formed the Western European Union's defense organization the same year the Treaty of Brussels was signed. However, the nations thought it was necessary to include the United States to counter the military power of the USSR and to prevent the revival of nationalist militarism. This soon led to forming NATO. All the nations of NATO included the United States, Canada, Portugal, Italy, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland, and the 5 nations that were signed to the Treaty of Brussels. The big picture of NATO is to preserve world peace. The combined military spending of all NATO members constitutes over 70% of the world's defense spending. Consequently, they agreed that if an armed attack occurred, each of them, in exercise of the right of individual or collective self-defense, would assist the member being attacked, taking such action as it deemed necessary, including the use of armed force to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area.
The outbreak of the Korean War in June 1950 had a big impact on NATO because it raised the threat of communist countries working together. This forced the alliance to develop certain military plans. To prepare in case of communist attack, NATO first created Exercise Mainbrace, which brought over 200 ships and 50,000 personnel to train the defense of Central Europe in 1952. The next year, Exercise Grand Slam and Exercise Longstep were made for naval and amphibious practices in the Mediterranean Sea. The Netherlands Corps, an Allied Air Force of Central Europe, the AAFCE, simulated atomic air-ground exercise involving the Central Army Group. Exercise Italic Weld, which was a combined air, naval, and ground practice in northern Italy. And finally, Exercise Weldfast, which was a combined amphibious landing practice in the Mediterranean Sea involving British, Greek, Italian, Turkish, and U.S. naval forces. Greece and Turkey also joined NATO in 1952, which forced the United States and Britain to negotiate over how to bring the 2 countries into the military command structure. In 1954, the Soviet Union suggested that it would join NATO to preserve peace, but all the other countries were feared that it was a plan to weaken the Allies, so it was quickly rejected. In response to the rejection, the Warsaw Pact was created with the Soviet Union, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, and East Germany. Also, the President of France, Charles de Gaulle, protested the United States and Britain that the organization was looking more like a special relationship between the 2 countries instead of a peace treaty. He also argued that France and other countries felt like the US were the only ones running the organization and that they wanted to be treated as equal. In 1959, France withdrew its Mediterranean fleet from NATO command. In 1966, all French armed forces were removed from NATO's integrated military command, and all non-French NATO troops were asked to leave France. Even though France showed close relations with NATO during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, de Gaulle still fled from NATO and created his own independent defense system.
After the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Warsaw Pact in 1991, this caused a strategic re-evaluation of NATO's purpose, nature, tasks, and even geographic focus. The Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, agreed between NATO members and the Soviet Union and signed in Paris in 1990, mandated specific military reductions on the continent. Part of post-Cold War reduction, NATO's military structure was reorganized with new forces such as the Headquarters, Allied Command Europe, Rapid Reaction Corporations. The changes were made by the time when the collapse of the Soviet Union occurred, and on the military balance in Europe were recognized in the Adapted Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty, which was signed in 1999. The policies of French President Nicolas Sarkozy have resulted in a major reform of France's military position, concluding with the return to a full membership on April 4, 2009, which also included France rejoining the military command of NATO while maintaining an independent nuclear defense system.